I think we should turn to our friend in the Middle East, in Israel, for the next talk. This is, I've been to Israel several times with Gila Haron. I'd like to introduce her briefly. Gila lives in Herzliya, in a beautiful part of the Israeli coastline. And she and I have helped create this thing, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East. Now, Marco talked about the importance of reconciliation. Well, how can we get it? Here's a case study. The Israelis, the Palestinians, the people of the Jewish faith and the Muslim faith, and then Christians, they're all in this eternal war, which has been going on for 1,000 years and more. You know, what deep reconciliation can we do? And one way is to study the languages, to find wisdom at the core. So Gila, I think we'd love to hear your views. What have you been thinking about these matters?
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
Okay, great. Well, I'm very happy to be here. I've been listening to all the speakers until now, and I can't agree more to everything that they have said. And I'm very happy, basically, to hear it. So I'm going to address my talk about the role of Hebrew, I would say, in this conversation. I wrote my things because I wasn't sure of myself, so you'll have to excuse me that I will have to read it from what I've written. So the subject of this webinar intends to examine the truth that intellectuals are supposed to be sharing in the interest of peace. Now, to address this, I will have to share with you some of my Hebrew knowledge. In Hebrew, we don't have an Hebrew word for the word intellectual. We have adopted the English one. However, in the ancient Hebrew writings, we use the word chokhmah, meaning the intelligence of the heart or wisdom. Chokhmah from the root chacham. Chokhmah is the name of the second sphera in the Kabbalistic model of creation, the tree of life. The light of the Creator streams forth to the first sphera, the Keter one, and then descends to the second sphera, which is the Chokhmah, and in the right hand side. And that sphera represents the potential knowledge of all there is. From there, it streams to the third sphera on the left side of the tree. We call this third sphera Binah, from the root bin, and it represents the ability to manifest the potential thought forms from Chokhmah or from the divine thought forms. It is the divine intelligence in practice in our world of 3 dimensions. How all this is connected to our subject of truth and peace. In Hebrew, the word peace is shalom, meaning a state of being that has completed itself. That is how we greet each other when we meet each other. Unfortunately, the real meaning of the word has been lost long ago. This wholeness, completion, represents the completion of the journey of the soul, the full cycle of Alpha Omega of the individual as well as all mankind or humanity. In Hebrew, we use the alphabetic Hebrew letters, and that would be, instead of Alpha Omega, Aleph to Taf. The other word we examine here is the word truth. What is basically truth? In our society, and people talked about it until now, each one has its own truth. A truth is a function of our hidden belief system. There are many belief systems in our world history, I would say, than in current world. Which one is the more valid than the other? How can we know? How can we choose? What are the criteria for our so-called knowing? What we see today is a struggle of power over what is the truth. And yet, we don't have a valid mechanism to make our judgment on this case, I would say. In science, we have mathematics as the fundamental science that develops from certain axioms that they don't need proof. All future developments of in mathematics are based on this, I think it's 5 or 7 assumptions. So we have a criteria of how to decide if something is false or truth. What we know from current science, and Einstein was mentioned here before, is that the observer basically influences the result of his observations. That means that something in his essence, whether it will be his belief system or other factors, are involved in the end result. In social science, we have the study of the statistics to establish a temporary truth. But when we come to human science or to philosophy, what would be considered as truth? Many have dealt with this question in the past. Using the Hebrew language shades some light on it. Truth in Hebrew is the word emet. Remember I told you about the cycle of Alpha Omega? In the word emet, we have the cycle from the first Hebrew letter Aleph to the end of the cycle, the Taf, passing through the Mem. That's what constructs the word emet, which is the translation of the word truth. And if we trace back, I would say, the original meaning of the word, and we combine it with what has been said here, that the world was created with vibrations. So each word, each syllable, or each letter, each Hebrew letter is a combination or stands for certain vibrations. A certain vibrations that have their validity or derive from the original thought forms of the divine thinking, I would say. So the Mem, if we can focus on the Mem is also the letter of water. In Hebrew, Maim, double Mem you have in the word Maim. And what we know about the water, we know that the water have this ability to record and maintain vibrations. that has been proven some time ago by the famous scientist, Japanese scientist who talked about it and has, even showed it in a special book. Also in our DNA, the vibrations are encoded in a watery environment. So if the question was how we are going to define truth, all what I've said until now and what the other people have been saying, that is that the ancient scriptures, either in Hebrew or in Sanskrit or the pagan ones or the Christianity, they all trace back to a divine thinking. Even when we use to a divine order, even when I use the word criteria, embedded in it is the word creator. Then that means that in order to experience allness, we have to accept the fact that we are that we have a creator, a creative intelligence that has created the world. This talk is not accepted. One said, I think Marcos said, that it's becoming part of the mainstream. Yes, slowly it's becoming, and it's making me very happy. But many scientists still, and philosophers still are trapped, I would say, in the three-dimensional thinking and don't accept that there is a creator to our world. So if we want to arrive the state of peace, also when I go to the word shalom, shalom in Hebrew is, as I said, is from the word completion, allness. So we need to be aware of this concept in order to make peace with ourselves, with each other, and with all the ancient traditions that exist. And someone said that all the ancient wise men or wise women agree on the basic. So we have to go to the basic to make the full cycle of the Alpha Omega as a humanity in order to reach this ultimate state of completion, shalom, allness, and so on. There is one philosopher which was brave enough to address this way of thinking at the beginning, I would say, of the 19th century. His name was Gershon Shalom. And what he tells us about himself is that there is one question that is posed or forced itself upon him. Does Judaism as a tradition or as an experience still exists as a life theory of faith? Has it kept up developing, or is it just an object of knowledge? That is from one of his letters, The Story of Friendship. One can say that his life work has been devoted a complete effort to answer this question. Shalom's, or Sholom's, as you say in English, Sholom's Judaism reflects a faith in the divine, in God, in Elohim. There are his written words in a letter to the founder, to Mr. Shoken, who was the founder of the newspaper Haaretz in 29th to the 10th, 1937. And that's what he wrote. I haven't become Kabbalist by mistake. I had thought that I knew that I was doing, I thought that I knew what I was doing when I've chosen to become a philolog and leave the field of mathematics and the epistemology, the theory of epistemology. I thought it would be an easier task. My thinking has led me to doubt rationalism thinking and to affirm mystical theories. I had entered this field in order to write about the metaphysics of the Kabbalah, what is known as the philosophy of Judaism. I think that the key for the understanding of the Kabbalistic writing has been lost to us in the ways of history. Sometimes we need the courage to do it, the courage to be swallowed by those writings, and the courage to pass through the doorstep of symbolism and penetrate the fog of history. To penetrate through this fog is the mission of my life, even if it requires making sacrifices, that full stop, even if it requires making sacrifices. So this is, to my understanding, an intellectual, if you would like to say, a seeker of truth that is willing to do the way and to risk even his academic position, I would say, from what was accepted as logic, rationalism, science, and enter to the doorstep of mysticism in order to understand, I would say, the world. Now, the last thing I would like to comment is that in the last, I don't know how many years, 10 years or so, I've been teaching the keys of Enoch. And Enoch, according to the Bible, was or is the most savage sage man that was taken by God to heaven and was told everything about creation. So in this, and I've learned a lot from this book. Now, because, what was her name? The first speaker talked about the Sanskrit. I can add to that in this book of the Keys of Enoch, it talks about 4 ancient languages. One of them is Sanskrit. It's the Egyptian one, the Coptic one, the Tibetan one, I think, or the Chinese. And maybe there is another one that I don't remember now, and Hebrew. And what is interesting, that it differentiates those languages into according to the ability to, if you would like to say, to develop in the language that we talk today, to the language to develop neurological abilities. So, and Karni was her name. She talked about the abilities of Sanskrit to be the language of the computers, the logic, the grammar in the Sanskrit that goes very well with the language that can be adopted by the logarithms of the computers. So if I quote Enoch in the keys, he talks about two languages that develop the horizontal thinking, like the horizontal hemisphere and in our brain, the horizontal thinking in our brain, and the vertical thinking, which is the other hemisphere of the brain is in charge. And the Hebrew language combines both this, I mean, the Hebrew letters combines both abilities. So I think that I made my point. With this, I will stop. And if you would like to ask any questions, if I will be able to answer you with pleasure. So thank you very much for the opportunity to express my thinking about truth, knowledge, and reconciliation.
Well, thank you so much, Gila. That was marvelous. And you've given us lots of food for thought. Not everyone may be familiar with the Kabbalah, which is a scientific study of the Hebrew sounds as they manifest, particularly in the biblical text, and then, but also in consciousness. It's a very, very sophisticated esoteric system, equivalent to Sanskrit studies, and also to Druid knowledge about Gaelic and Celtic languages. So that's why I've called in the Kabbalah runes for a universal Kabbalah. We have to get the great thinkers and linguists of the planet together to share their esoteric knowledge about.
I agree with you. Yeah, exactly.
And Arabs too. I would love to invite a Sufi, because the Arab language contains exactly the same understanding, the sounds. Like you mentioned shalom, they have salam. It's very similar, and the Quran is written in Arabic, obviously. It has an encoded Kabbalistic sonic mysticism, which is the technical term. My colleague, Professor Gavin Flood, who spoke last time from Oxford University, who studies Sanskrit, he's aware of this field. It's called sonic mysticism. One of my interests would be to get Noam Chomsky before he dies. If we could get Noam Chomsky to come on this forum, because what he's done in his theory of, he calls it generative grammar. Chomsky is one of the greatest living linguists. And in his theory of generative grammar, he argues that there's a deep structure inside the human brain, actually, which enables us to acquire language. And if you're born in China, you'll end up speaking Chinese. If you're born in Israel, you'll end up speaking Hebrew. In England, English. And India, if you're lucky, you'll learn Sanskrit, or at least Hindi. But Chomsky says, well, what is it that in the human brain that makes it possible for us to acquire language? There must be some deeper grammar of thought behind the specific language structures. And if you study the grammars of all these different languages, it points to what he calls the deep structure, or the deep grammar. Now that's pioneering. And what Chomsky hasn't dared to do is take that into the field of sonic mysticism. He's not dared to go in print on that. I'm sure he privately has done that. But, that's the cusp, is to take generative grammar into sonic mysticism. And if we could get Chomsky to come on and say yes and hand on the torch, then we really are doing some important work. Okay, does anyone else have any questions for Gila? She gave us a wonderful summary of a lifetime study there. We've been joined by Helena from Monaco. Helena, would you like to just share a few thoughts? I know you didn't hear the first lecture, which was about Sanskrit, and you came in and heard the Hebrew one. So share. What languages do you speak, Helena?
Norwegian, that's my first language, and then English, some French, some German. That's it. But I think, if you're really connected, you can understand all languages because it's all energy. So everything is created by the mind, and everything you experience is coming from the mind. So if we are able to unprogram ourselves to surpass the languages, we can understand everything. And the truth is, whatever is happening to us, we have done to someone else before, or we have created the conditions for this to happen to us. There are no victims. And that's why we have an excellent opportunity now to create something better. And that's how we change the world, to decide now and forget whatever has happened in the past and making the right decisions right now to be in the truth, to create something better now for the future. And I think the pandemic has really given people a chance to connect with themselves because they don't have the distraction from the outer world as much, and they can go more inside. And I hope this is the new start of peace, that we can program everything.
And you've spent many years studying with Buddhists, including Tibet. You once told me an interesting story of one of your meditation teachers. It was like he didn't have to say anything. You knew what he was speaking.
Yeah.
Tell us about how telepathy works. Is that relevant?
Well, it was with the Lama Sopa, and we were in this big hall in France, and we were about maybe 500 people. And he was just sitting on the stage, and we were all in meditation, and it was almost like you had this light being turned on, and it was this energy just flowing through all of us. And I connected so much with him. It was this, he reflected back to me all I still have to work on. It was amazing.
So if you can study the neurology and neurophysics of how meditation how enlightenment can be transmitted from a student to a disciple to a teacher back, what is the neuroscience of enlightenment? That's the question I'd like to get us working on.
But I don't think you can, what he did was he gave you the energy to see what you can be. But you still have to do the work, He can just give you a glimpse on what you have to do, because afterwards, everything the work you still have to do is coming back. Your mind, your mind takes over again. So you have to really meditate more and purify more so you come to that level yourself.
Sure, we have to do enlightenment for each one of us from our own orientation perspective.
But it's amazing to be around those people who really lift you up and show you what you can be, what your potential is.
Correct. Yes. Thank you. That's why we have each tradition has its sages and so on. So, yeah. Anyway,
I need
Helena's,
to go, but thank you so much for arranging this, and you're such an inspiration.
Well, thanks for coming from Monaco. I was musing this morning about Hercules. I just want to say one last thing to the group and you. Monaco is named after Hercules because it was a temple to Hercules in Monaco. And he was called Hercules Monachos, meaning the one and only. Now, Hercules was a deity throughout the Mediterranean, the Greeks, the Romans, but also the Phoenicians. He was called Hercules Melkos, and they had temples in Phoenicia. And I was reading recently a study of Gnostic teachings who equate the 12 labors of Hercules with the 12 demons that control negativity in the human nature. We have to conquer these 12 demonic forces to reach enlightenment. Things like greed, hate, and that's our current. That's what we have to do. It's a Herculean task. So it's wonderful you're there. I hope one day you can join us from the actual site of the Temple of Hercules. That would be very cool. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Helena. Right. Okay, so now any other questions to Gila? She's still available. Has anyone else been studying Kabbalah on this call? Jai, have you looked into it?
No, I haven't. It's one area I haven't looked into, to be honest, but it fascinates me.
Okay. Well, I think we ought to move on then to our next speaker. Thank you again, Gila. We've asked...
If I could maybe speak with her to do with the Hebrew and the tree of life. Okay.
Well, I was going to say,
paralleling the tree of life with Vedic tradition, the tree of life seems to be the spinal cortex within our spine and the branches within the mind, within the brain. So the tree of life would be the central spinal column, which houses all the, where the universal energy, cosmic energy enters us and flows through us. I was wondering if there is a parallel regarding the tree of life in what you know about Hebrew and Kabbalah with the yogic teaching of the tree of life is actually within us, and it's the spinal column. So we must raise our consciousness up through the tree of life, bridging like heaven, infinite mind of the Almighty, and the earth through our heart. So
that's a great question. You're going to be speaking next, Mohammed. So, but Gila, are you still with us? Can you comment on that?
Yes, I'm still with you. The tree of life is a model, is a Kabbalistic model for creation, as I said, from the very original thought form of the creative intelligence towards all the dimensions up to our this three-dimensional world. And it is a model for the individual, as well as for all the world. But to understand that it takes more time. And yes, if we talk only on the individual person, there is a reference between the chakras and the different spherot in the human body. Okay?
yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gila. Yeah.
About Kabbalah in English, you would find it, that they will really show it how it is designed, I would say. Or
There are books.
what each sphere does and what's responsible, or what are the qualities, and how a person in the cycle of life has to develop through this Sephirot, attributes of the Sephirot, okay? So it's, in this part, it's very much like the Indian teachings, the Sanskrit, as she said before, and so on, about the chakra teachings, okay? The chakra teachings of energy.
Yeah. Right. So look, thank you, Gila. Mohammed, it's your turn. Do share what you would like about your teachings now. You've been studying. Tell us a bit about your life story. How did you get to become a sage living in Indonesia, working with the universal state of the earth. I mean, you're in an important role there.
Yeah.
Who
Okay.
are you?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say maybe in my although I still class myself young, my younger days, growing up, possibly I went astray in my life and lived a different life. Uh, Influenced by society, and possibly not in the most efficient way. So I had always had this inner calling or inner drive to to try and make the world a better place, and to try and maybe possibly make myself a better person. And that calling took me on a pretty spiritual journey, so it did, which is, yeah, it still hasn't, it's not the end, it still hasn't finished. There's many wonderful places in the world that I would like to visit and feel a calling to. But along that journey, well, it brought me to Indonesia, where I was originally, I met a group that claimed to be the leader, sorry, not the leaders, the owners of the United Nations. Okay, and I know that sounds a bit, but they had some compelling data, etc., on it. And what they were trying to do was introduce a universal basic income to the world. But in their quest to do so, they were making the importance of nationality, individualistic way, more important. I mean, sort of what America has done around the world, they were trying to do it with a different country, with their own nationality, with their own culture, to make them the world's dominance, etc. So I gave them the opportunity to prove exactly what they were saying, and they failed at it. So we ended up in, I went to the Supreme Court in Indonesia, etc., and the whole ring of them got taken down. So it did. From that didn't stop me from living in Indonesia. I became a world citizen, so I did. Sovereignty. Then I sort of relinquished a bit of my sovereignty to become a state citizen, but a state as in the universal state of the earth. Okay, so not just the state of Indonesia, or state of England, or state of Norway, but a supranational state, a state above all the other individual states, and working with this to bring about the point where we all have our passports, Earth citizen passports, rather than our individual passports, only our individual passports of individual countries. Now, it's a big mission, so it is, because that will undoubtedly do away with the visa system. So it would, if you can travel freely via an Earth citizen passport without having visas. What it also takes as well is a civil shift, a civil upgrade of the world civil system. So it does to current 21st century understanding 21st century mentality, 21st century consciousness, which isn't actually just modern consciousness. I would believe it's universal and ancient consciousness as well, which is prevalent throughout the whole world and deep inset in our hearts. So to like the European Union, when the European Union was set up, it had a parliament and the government and also a European court, etc., and a one currency for the entire European region. Is similar to what the universal state of the earth is trying to do, with a currency, a supranational currency of the entire world. Also a parliament where intellectuals, etc., of the world would sit as, and the citizens of the earth would sit as on the parliament and make earth parliament decisions and earth government decisions on a more universal, unified level of solution, should I say, solution to the world's problems. Because if we focus too much on the individual problems of the world, we'll never get to the end of them. But the universal solutions to the problems of the world, we have certain things that many people agree on, like sustainable development goals. They're universally sort of accepted now and becoming more mainstream, etc. So dealing with universal solutions to universal problems, I believe will greatly diminish many of the problems in the world, and everyone here is sort of invited to become a part of that solution. So they are to become higher earth citizens and even higher earth leaders of the one supranational, universal, unified earth state. And we all can complain about problems of the whole states and individual states. Well, instead of complaining about them, perhaps it's time we all step up and become the actual earth government, the earth parliament, the earth leaders of the next century, this current century. And so this is open to everyone, the intellectuals of the world, to be honest, to be the vanguard of all of this, to be quite honest, for a new civilization, a new civilization identity, perhaps.
Well, thank you, Mohammed, for your stirring words. And maybe you can put in chat the link to your website.
Yeah, I'll put in a couple of links, sir. Yeah, I'm not alone on this. There's great philosophers involved, like the Dr. Igor Kondrashin, who's a very, he's a very wise man. So he is. Also, other members of the World Philosophical Forum. I try to bridge everything regards philosophy and the essence of philosophy and the essence of all religions and the essence of all cultures and traditions, really, with one beyond all of creation, absolute purity, when all vibration and all enfolds back into that, then really there is no duality, and that truly unites us all. And if we can remember that origin, then we're definitely not going to fight about the future of our differences, because if we go back to that then, or forward to that even, obliteration, disintegration of all life and the earth and humanity, we're not going to enjoy life that much more, are we? And I think life is a gift that we can treasure and share together. And so, yeah, let's enjoy the diversity a little bit more and share our sacred ways and our sacred paths, and not argue about it, but celebrate it, celebrate our individuality and our uniqueness, but through understanding of the oneness of everything. And that's all I'm trying to do. I'm just a humble heart in the world. Many of you are such great scholars and you know, educators, etc. I'm lucky enough to be a professor as well, and have a PhD. I think a PhD is like the how to explain it, the sphere of all human thought, the sphere of human thought. To explain it like you're pushing the boundary of human thought, like a little needle pushing on the boundary of the human thought, and it creates like a nipple in the boundary of human thought. And that little nipple at first is a new height, a new frontier, you could even perhaps say. After a while, it becomes perhaps normally accepted, and then the whole human sphere of thought pushes out. So people who have a PhD have to possibly have that responsibility to push the thoughts, the human thought, the sphere of human thought, and the boundaries a little bit further and a little bit more farther, but without bursting the bubble, and yeah, and that's I hope I don't burst the bubble, and I hope, yeah, we can all enjoy it together. Anyway, that's my
I love that image. I love that image, Mohammed. Thank you. I mean, one question we have, and we're coming, you know, we've still got a couple of speakers to fit in, so we can't discuss too often, but, you know, is what the role of the World Intellectual Forum can be. Because we have on our board, the World Board, we have Dr. Igor Kondrashin, who is the head of this Universal State of the Earth project. But we also have Professor Glenn Martin, who runs a parallel approach to world governance, which is much more federalist, more democratic, and less aristocratic. And so there's the aristocrats want the Universal State of the Earth. Let's just do it now. Let's set it up. And then Glenn Martin is very like the plodders want to do it all methodologically and soundly and democratically. But they are also very well organized. They have thousands of members and activists. Now, there's the beauty is that we have both schools on our board. And as intellectuals, we should not take sides. We should support both approaches. You know, there's room for everyone at the table. And one of the projects I'm working on, there won't be time to go into it in detail, but one of our friends here, Murali Thumbi, and I and others, we're trying to build a universal peace tower in the very south of India. This is a project I've not shared with you before. And we would like both your group and Professor Glenn Martin's and any other sort of world governance approaches to have a base there. This will be the first ever tower dedicated to world peace. So, you know, we can have the conversation in a complementary and co-creative way from the place of absolute unity that you spoke. Gila spoke about the divine. You know, we have to rethink the thoughts of God, as it were, and help recreate, because the planetary system is failing. You know, we have to get on the God team and redo it somehow.
Yeah.
So you're definitely on that team, Mohammed. Thank you so much.
And thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
Anyone else got any brief questions to Mohammed before we move on? Mishra, you've not spoken much today. Professor Mishra, as a scientist, how do you think about the speeches you've heard so far? I mean, as a scientist, you tend to be more on the skeptical front. But what's your, have you had a religious revelation in this conference so far?
Yeah, Thomas, very nice question you have raised. But I should tell you that past 3 hours prior to coming to this meeting, I was in a scientific meeting where I was chairing a panel where we were discussing the science and technology in future. So what I discussed there, what I talked about there, I feel as though I am coming from one world to another world. To me, it looks here entirely different. And that's what I enjoy. One thought I would like to share with you, absolutely, that as intellectuals, we should remain open-minded. And we cannot rubbish any particular thinking or particular ideology, but we should be aware of one thing, that whatever we learn in life, whatever we practice in life, whatever philosophy we take, as Prince Muhammad is talking, is up to the individual. Absolutely, it is up to the individual. As far as universe peace is concerned, it is our responsibility as humans, as intellectuals, as scientists, as philosophers, to contribute a bit what we can. We cannot change completely, but we can make difference. I think we should be happy with that. With regard to the languages, I want to tell you something, which is a little bit scientific way of looking at the things. Our brain has enormous capacity to absorb many, many things. It is not designed to a particular language or to a particular philosophy. It is designed absolutely universal, open to anything. It is for this reason that a person may be born anywhere. If he is allowed to live another place, he will be knowing the language of that place. He will be inclined to that philosophy. He will get tuned to that culture. So adaptability in the brain is tremendous. Therefore, it is difficult to understand. As I was listening to the Sanskrit language part, and I must tell you that it will be a fallacy to think that Sanskrit will do any universal job. It will be a fallacy. Any language, like she is talking about Hebrew, another person may be talking about Latin, another person may be talking about English. It is just expression. It has nothing to do with that I am superior or another person is not superior. No. It's just environment in which he lives. As he is telling that he lives with a wise man, so he has wise thoughts. It is for this reason, if I think Marco was talking about, language cannot make a person violent or peaceful. If that was so, then from one country there will be terrorists, but from many other countries there should be no terrorists. But terrorists are from all over, no matter what language. Why? So it is rather difficult to think that the language you speak is going to change your behavior. It will not happen. Language is a just mode of expression, and in whatever condition we live, I am speaking English, but tomorrow I can live in France and I can speak French. But I remain same. As human, it is our, what he was talking about, our behavioral change that will bring peace or violence. Our behavioral change, and how our behavior is modulated by our thinking. What we think whole day, in the evening you can see change in that person. What I do 10 days, 11th day you can see change in that person. It is like this. So for us to think the creation or the divine and the language of the divine, little difficult for me to absorb. As a scientist, I still believe in energy. I still believe in the form of energy. Everything is linked to energy part. Unit, common thing in the whole universe is energy.
Yeah.
Vibrational energy, rotational energy, translation energy, all kinds of energy I can talk to you. But it is unit. It is the way we are doing it. Brain receives vibrations. No matter you give by Sanskrit, you give by Hebrew, you give by English, it has capacity to absorb it. That's all.
Sure.
But
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. We're running low on time now. So can I ask you to save your thoughts for next time? Maybe you could be one of the official speakers next time.
No, it's okay. I enjoy listening to these viewpoints. And
yeah, but no, I'd love you to say it. Let me just introduce Professor Mishra. He's essentially an expert in radiation, and he's been involved with the Asian Association of people researching radiation research. So I'm going to set you a challenge for next month. I mean, because you say rightly, thought is the key. Yes. So I want you to find out the radiation behind thought for us. Is thought a radiation? Sure. And if so, what is radiating it? Okay, there's a challenge for you. Okay.
Yes, okay.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to our last speaker, which is Jamieson Hill from Istanbul. He's not, he spoke at the Sanatan Dharma conference. We can hear I think Jamieson also has some poems for us, if I'm right.
Yes.
So come in and share your thoughts. I hope you've enjoyed the meeting today. And any concluding thoughts you have to share with us. Jai, it's over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, illustrious speakers. It's an honour to be among you. What I mainly am, just to say, to put it into context, I'm not a great academic scholar like many here today. I'm a ceremonialist. I've been doing fire ceremonies for nearly 3 decades. I was trained first in shamanism by a prolific author called Kenneth Meadows, and then 2 Indian sages in the foothills of the Himalayas in 1996, Sri Trilok Singh and Sri Vishnu Datta Mishra in Rajasthan, both who are disciples of Sri Harikam Babaji. So I've combined the Celtic Druid way with the Sanatan Dharma. I don't usually talk about spirituality or philosophy. I just like fires and chant. But anyway, I'd just like to invite you from just a moment of reflection for 1 minute. I'm going to do a Druid Gaelic chant, the R1, which means in Gaelic breeze or wind. So if you would like to close your eyes for a moment, I'm going to chant the Arwen. Thomas and me have done many fire ceremony gatherings at Stonehenge and other parts of the country in the past, and this is a common chant amongst the Druids. Okay, if you'd like to close your eyes now. Arwen, Okay, if you'd like to open your eyes now. Okay, so I'm going to talk. First thing I'd like to say is a little bit of perspective before I tell you a little story. I've got my 15-minute timer going to keep to time. Perceptive filters. 3 people look at the sky. A poet sees a majestic jewel in the sky. A scientist sees a collection of gaseous forms and solar rays. The priest sees divine wonders in heaven. All are truth from different perceptive filters. In the same way that we all look at life with our different perspectives, these are like the rivers that lead to the one ocean, or the concept of Sanatana Dharma. Whether we believe in science, religion, or philosophy, we're united by our humanity and our oneness from that original state, or our egos are divided by labels. Cast your minds back, December the 10th, 2016. I don't know if you remember what you were doing, but on December the 10th, 2016, I was walking down Barbaros Street in Istanbul, where I live most of the year. The rest of the time I'm in the UK. It was a beautiful sunny day. We'd been at the cinema and the shopping centre. We were feeling ecstatic. And as we walked through the sunshine, suddenly there was a loud, incredibly deafening explosion. And we stopped. Everybody stopped. And then there was a second deafening explosion. The next moment, as time seemed to come back from that frozen moment of stillness, a pickup flew around the corner with its windscreen blown out. 2 huge bombs had been set off by terrorists 10 minutes walk away at the football stadium. The next thing, I remember an old lady just panicking in the middle of the road. The cars all stopped and everybody started screaming and running. And we ran through the streets. We ran, and as I ran for the streets, I remember the fish restaurant, people looking up at the TV news, trying to find out what the hell had happened. We eventually got home, and the news and the TV broadcast what had happened in the hours afterwards, that 48 people had been killed and 166 injured by 2 terrorist bombs. The first bomb was the one that decimated and killed most of the people. The second bomb was a suicide bomber running through the park that I go in every day to exercise. And the armed police surrounded him. And unfortunately, he set off his bomb and killed 4 police officers and a passing civilian. Once I'd got home, the sheer shock and fright was unimaginable. But for me, it was the beginning of a new journey. I'd sat on my spirituality very comfortably for many years, doing fire ceremonies and shamanism and enjoying that bliss. And I'd served groups in 3 ashrams in the UK for many years. But the last 7 years I've been in Istanbul and doing my fire ceremonies and feeling very blissed out and not really sharing it so much. And that year, there were 8 terror attacks on the city that I lived in. In 3 separate incidents, 100 people were killed within 3 kilometers of our flat. And I lived through the night of the coup. The coup was going on 30 minutes away by the bridge. There were explosions all night, machine gun fire. There were sonic booms as F-16s screamed across our roofs. It was pure terror. I'd never experienced pure, sheer terror. After that year, I woke up and I realized that what I needed to do was actively be part of this piece. I could no longer just talk about it and chant and meditate and be a happy Larry. I needed to go out there and embody it. And this is where I come to my concept of the universal truth that we must share. My late teacher, Sri Muniraji, Sri Tulak Singh, said in the future, he said to many people, people will become more polarized and they will go to the extremes, the left and the right. But you must not get involved in this. You must focus on your spiritual practice as people go to the extremes. As intellectuals, as visionaries, philosophers, as human beings, we need to focus on some core universal truths. We must focus on the unity of all races. We are, after all, one human race. The unity of all faiths, philosophies, and science. We must embrace all as important and part of the picture. The universal right to freedom of expression, the universal right to freedom of sexuality, gender equality, racial equality, disability equality, and so forth. The universal right to freedom of belief, to be religious or to be an atheist or to believe whatever is in our hearts. And we need to teach children and students and the generations to come, because I was an educator for many years, that they need to have a discerning mind now to evaluate and discern between propaganda and real news. and in the spirit of ancient Greece, and I know Thomas will love this as a fellow bard and Druid, to rekindle that flame of healthy debate in the mainstream. I'm not talking about us because we're all open-minded philosophers, visionaries, but that in the mainstream to bring back the flame of healthy debate and sharing views, free of hatred and polarity, to find a balance and respect within faith groups' ideologies. Because with globalization, cultures have become merged into a melting pot, and in some cases assimilated, but we've seen cultural clashes. We've seen terrorism, like I was talking about, the terrorism here in Turkey, ISIS, PKK, etc. And all across the world, we've seen the cultural clashes leading to death and violence. But the $100 question all I think we've got to ask as intellectuals, philosophers, visionaries is, what's the equilibrium between protecting the rights of one culture or faith group and allowing the basic human rights of another minority group? That balance is what we need to seek. And in terms of the Sanatana Dharma philosophy of India, which my teachers shared with me, and my basic understanding of it, like I say, is as a ceremonialist, not as a great scholar of the Vedas, but I have read most of the Vedas. We need to unite people across all disciplines and stop the polemics of left and right, Brexit, whatever it is, Biden, Trump, these right across the world. We've got to stop this and bring back healthy debate and unity. One of my favorite philosophers of all time was the theory of the unity of opposites, Heraclitus from Greece, ancient Greece. The idea that love and hate come from the same place, that non-dualistic, the same wisdom as Advaita Vedanta, that all is self. If we can try and transcend the opposites, transcend the polemics, we can build a generation of enlightened thinkers. 2016 and the year of terror woke me up. I stopped sitting on my comfortable, I can sit there chanting and do mantras and I'll be comfortable in my own life, and realized that I need to go out and reach out into the world through my work in education, which was mainly in the past, or still do some teaching. But in terms of uniting and supporting people in their faiths, in their scientific beliefs, in their atheism, whatever it is they believe, as long as it's about peace and unity, I must represent a unity and a support for all those groups. Finally, I'd like to finish with a poem. I'm doing quite well. I've done 8 minutes 30. I've got my time again. This is called The Lost Gold of the Soul, and it's about the unity of opposites. Okay. Breathtaking and rapturous moment of the first kiss with a true love. Shattering pathos of a loved one as their soul flies into the great above. Infinity of the ocean merged with the expanse of eternal sky. First cry of a baby and the last breath of one about to die. The lost gold of our soul, untapped mine of plentiful bliss, lies dormant in many hearts who on the ocean of life are set adrift, deeply entrenched in the story of their lives, grasping at the permanence of the impermanent world of death and life. Be like the sailor who cries not when the sea bears little fruit, for on those days he is content with the baking sun and silence mute, and the freshness of the spray from the insomnia waves that never stop or sleep in their cycle of tidal moves. Be like the tree whose roots reach down into the earth and branches and leaves stretch heavenward to the sweet skies with mirth. Feel the connection with the universal spark across the globe, and then even in death and loss, we still shine in the unchanging bliss of hope. The lost gold of the soul, beyond sadness and happiness, beyond good and hate, love. Love and love, ice and fire, black and white, the eternal shining gold of our souls. Om Namah Shivaya, Awen, Awen, Awen. Well, I've managed to do that in 10 minutes, Thomas. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you so much. Your poem was marvelous. The gold of the soul. When did you write that? Is that a reason?
It was, well, actually, it's from 2018, and I tried to make it into a song with a hip hop artist, but we didn't get it together in the end. We tried, but I'm planning to do something myself because I'm working with 3 bands. I write songs and I sing. So yeah. So
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jai. Jai is a bard as well as a poet and a teacher and educator. So I'm glad you could bring that dimension in. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our time together. It's been a special sharing. I'd like to thank everyone in conclusion who's spoken or, you know, chewed on thinking. Not everyone speaks every meeting. I want to just finish with a few thoughts to share. I'm not going to be long because time is precious. But I want to share something that hopefully can help people move forward. I've just spent 3 days at a conference run from the University of Western Georgia on cathartic history. I didn't know what to expect. It was quite a high-level academic forum discussing the role of catharsis in history. And there were some brilliant talks. There were talks about, these were all classical scholars. So these were people who were experts in Homer, Thucydides, Herodotus, and the Roman historians. And we were asking, where is history going? Is there some catharsis that we need? What is catharsis? It means purification. Now, I want to read something from a very important book to me. This is a book I recommend to everyone. It's called The Greek Philosophical Terms. Can you all see the picture? I hope. Can you see that, Jai? Yeah. Okay, so anyway, catharsis means purgation or purification. It's a word with both religious and medical implications, seeming to fluctuate between affirmative and negative functions at the hands of the philosophers. Among the Pythagoreans, catharsis had, as might be expected, strong religious connotations. Catharsis is a purification of the soul, effected, we are told, by Iamblichus's Life of Pythagoras, through musike, i.e. by rendering it harmonious. Indeed, this is philosophy. This Pythagorean identification of catharsis and philosophia is found in Plato. And the analogy with music runs through all dialogues of Plato. In the Phaedo, Socrates equates philosophy and musike. And in the Republic, musike is the foundation of the master virtue, sophrosine, which means moderation. We are further told in the Timaeus that the care of the soul consists in bringing its modulations into harmony with the cosmic order. But when Socrates informs us in the Sophist that his art is cathartic, we have passed over to other grounds where the function of catharsis is described as, quotes, the removal of evil from the soul, just as medical art does for the body. So that's the quote. And my concluding thoughts are, what we're trying to do as the World Intellectual Forum, as a gathering place for thought, is this dialectic art, because Socrates talks about his art as being cathartic. It means purifying, removing evil from the soul. That's a very important task we're doing. We should think of ourselves as medical doctors, followers in the Hippocratic art, but using Socrates' method, which is dialectic, which means discussion, sharing of ideas. And in this forum, we've heard from different perspectives, from science, from spirituality, from linguistics, from faith groups, from experts in different branches of science, and also from poets and artists. All of us are involved in this dialectical work of catharsis. why does it matter? Well, you know, we know that the world is teeming with problems. The pandemic is merely one aspect of that. There was a brilliant talk at this conference on cathartic history by a scholar who discovered that in 350 there was a huge pandemic from Carthage, Rome, traveled throughout the Hellenistic world, and the Bishop of Carthage, Cyprian, wrote about it. He tried to counsel his parish. They were coming to him in terror. They were dying. It's thought it was a form of Ebola. And thousands of people died in all cities throughout the world, in the Mediterranean region. And he was asked, well, why would God send us a pandemic? Why would God kill us all like this? I think millions of people are still asking that question now. I mean, you know, and there aren't easy answers. Let's go forward. Let's keep the network going. We'll continue to meet every month and have different talks from different perspectives. Let's hope the catharsis can happen. We can play a small role. I liked Mohammed's image of the needle. The PhD is you know, is our own little attempt to increase the scope of human thinking. And if you haven't finished your PhD yet, Marco, you've spent many years doing it, please do so for the sake of humanity. Get that bubble extended a little further. Every time we can extend consciousness, I think that it can extend, you know, hope for humanity. So thank you so much. I think we'll go on a little. We've gone on a little bit longer than we normally do, but if anyone has any final thoughts or comments to share before we close.
Yeah, regarding the, I think the Hebrew letters YHVH. Okay, was an interesting study done by quantum physicists and sound, etc., to do with the sacred vowels. When we join the vowels together, we get another sound in between. So if I can intone them for you, what I will intone will be the E, the A, the O, and the I. Okay, and if you can listen for another, word between the lines, between the vowels, when they're being intoned, when they're joined together, you get another sound. Okay, so okay, and if you listen, you'll actually get the name Yahweh. Okay, and I'm not saying Yahweh, I'm saying Yahweh. Okay, so to do with sounds and different languages, when we join things together and we look at the unseen in between, generally we come up with another field of which possibly is universal thought and universal harmony, universal wisdom, and helps connect us all. So thank you for letting me share that.
That's profound.
Good
can you
share.
do the chant once more? Mohammed, can you do that for us just once more, and we'll finish there. Do your Yahweh chant once more.
Okay. Okay.
Right. Okay. Shalom, salam to everyone.
Salam, namaste. Peace be with you.
Peace be with everyone, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Okay. Om Sri Ramja. Om Nagavagavaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Right.
Om